Hello world and welcome to the gorgeous Universal Studios. Right now I'm going to give you a cool video on how to make sure that you're safe at Universal Studios. We're going to go over their regulations and their rules, and then I'm going to give you some tips at the end of the video. Now I want to make sure that you understand that these tips are not from a doctor. I am not a doctor. I do not have any professional medical advice to give you, but they will be helpful. And you can make up your own mind on whether you want to decide that or not. It's surely up to you. Now before we get started, I want to make sure that you hit that like button if I helped you out during this video, because it helps me out. If I help you out, help me out. I also want to make sure that you understand that if you have any questions, you can leave me a comment down below and I will do my best to answer them. Now, also, I'd like for you to subscribe if you like any of these things that are going to pop up right now. Thanks guys, I'm getting emails right now from big companies wanting to sponsor me. Sarcasm, I make no money off of this right now. First thing I want to cover that Universal does to keep their guests safe during this time is they lower the capacity that they run the park at. So I was on the phone with a guy from Universal and he said that they are running at a 50% capacity. However, everything else I see says that they're running at a 20 or 30% capacity. So I guess the employee from Universal would probably be more correct than just rumors you hear online. But he said we're running at a 50% capacity, and you can tell it. The park is a lot more empty than it usually is, and the lines are a lot lower. So if you want to brave this whole thing and come out here, it's probably a good time for you to do it. It's easy to get on rides and things. On your trip to Universal during these times, you better make sure you bring a face covering because they are required. Now, I have had the paper mask before. I've not tried the cloth mask, but compared to the paper mask, these neck gaiters are the way that we decided to go, and I am very happy that we did. It is much easier to breathe in this neck gaiter than it is a paper mask. So like I said, I can't vouch for the cloth ones, but you need to get one of these neck gaiters if you think it's safe enough. I'll put the link below down in the description to the one that I bought in case you want to buy it, but it is much easier to breathe in. Also, before you get in the park, they require that you do a temperature check. They just hold a touchless thermometer up to your forehead and it gives them a reading of your temperature, and if it is 100.4 or above, you will not be allowed into the park. These signs here are scattered throughout the park, especially in areas where people tend to congregate, and they just remind people about the rules. So wash your hands, face covering, 6 feet apart, all that. And if you don't want to read this, they have the rules playing over speakers, and people up in like upper levels of the park with microphones explaining the rules. So I know not a lot of people are going to stop and read this, but they can still have an opportunity to hear it from someone else or a recording. On each ride, they have markings on the ground that look like this, and they have another one that says stop here. So you just need to look at the ground to know where to stop, and that'll keep you 6 feet away. Now, I did see an exception to this when I was on Hagrid's. There was about maybe 5% of the line that had no markings, but people still kept their distance without needing the markings, so I thought that was pretty neat. You can see that happening right now. And I also wanted to point out that at each ride, they have a hand sanitizer person standing there. And this person will not let you get on the ride until you squirt some hand sanitizer on your hands and rub it in. That way they can make sure that the germs are not being passed onto the ride and spread to other people. Now, there may be some certain instances where that can happen, but at least Universal's doing their best. I wanted to show you guys that these signs are also posted in the merchandise stores. They also have this video playing back at the motel on the Universal channel that explains all of the safety procedures that they're doing and the rules that you need to follow to be able to stay in the park and have a good time. So I suggest watching this before you go to the parks, and I'm going to try to find it on YouTube and I'll post it in the description below. On top of spacing some of the physical lines out, they also have a virtual line experience on some of these rides. Some rides have a physical line and a virtual line experience. Some rides, like Hagrid's, only has a virtual line experience. So you're going to want to bring your cell phone, your smartphone, put the Universal app on there, and then try to get here early because that virtual line experience will fill up very quick for the day. But I'm here to tell you, even if it does fill up and it will not give you a virtual line pass, keep trying throughout the day, because that same thing happened to my wife and I, and at about I'd say 2 o'clock later on that day, a virtual line pass opened up and we were able to get on the ride. I mentioned earlier that the rides were shorter on weekdays, and I just wanted to let you guys know that yesterday, which was a Sunday, Revenge of the Mummy was a 40-minute wait. Today, which is a Monday, it's a walk-on. Now it says 15 minutes on the sign up front, but it practically takes you about 10 to 15 minutes to get to the ride. So I mentioned earlier that the queue lines are separated by about 6 feet, sometimes even more. I'm not lying to you guys. Sometimes they put like 15 feet between you and the person in front of you and behind you. But I also wanted to mention that, you know how queue lines for rides like zigzag? So you're actually standing next to someone? They've got these markers on the ground spaced out to where you're not even standing next to anyone. So there's no one behind you, in front of you, or in either of the sides. Check out how spaced out everything is. Now, it's not going to be like this in the Harry Potter sections, but this is how it is normally throughout Universal Studios. If you don't want to be near anybody, you don't have to be. I just had breakfast at the Leaky Cauldron, and it's a restaurant in this area for Harry Potter World. And I wanted you guys to know that the tables are even spaced out. I guess where they know they're not going to be operating at full capacity, they removed some of the tables, and they were able to gap them a little bit so people wouldn't be sitting next to each other. Now, there's also a couple other things about that as well, too. They are not letting you order up front unless, I'm guessing, you don't have your phone. But if you have your phone, you have mobile order, all you have to do is download the Universal app. So you're going to have mobile order. You're just going to sit at a table and order from your phone, and the waiter or waitress brings you your food, and they don't even touch your food. They just drop the tray down in front of you and you pick up your own food. Now, when I sat down over here at the Leaky Cauldron, the entire table was covered with cleaner and disinfectant, to the point to where it was almost sticky, which is honestly a good thing at this point. But yeah, it's pretty safe to go inside and eat, in my opinion. You're gonna have to make up your own mind of whether that's safe or not. Right now, we made it into what you call a U-Rest zone, and Universal Studios, as well as Islands of Adventure, has these placed throughout their parks. And what's good about the U-Rest zone is that you are allowed to take off your mask, because as you can tell, there's hardly no one here, and it's off to the side, it's out of traffic, so you run less of a risk of being near someone. So it's a good place to come and take these masks off, because it gets really stinking hot when you're walking in the hot sun with face coverings on and you're trying to breathe through a mask. So really appreciate them putting this inside their parks. I can't show you enough at how distanced everybody is right now. Look at the people going across the bridge. It's like, seriously, 15, 20 feet between everyone. Here's a hand sanitizer station right outside of Men in Black. They are scattered throughout the park, and they're at the end of each ride. Just getting off Men in Black reminded me to tell you guys something. Even when you're on the ride in your cart, you're still being social distance from other parties. So if the cart has like 4 rows, they will put a party in the first row, and then they'll put a party in the 3rd row. They skip the 2nd row. They may even put the second party in the 4th row. Sometimes they don't even put a second party on the cart. So for me, I'm the only one on the entire cart riding through these rides. Some of these rides. After riding Escape from Gringotts, I realized there's something else I needed to tell you. The more thrilling rides at Universal and Islands of Adventures requires you to put your stuff in lockers. Well, nowadays, during this whole situation, they only allow one person from your party to take the stuff to the lockers. So I'm sure if you had like 8 or 10 people in your party, you might be able to talk to a team member and they might figure out a way to help you. But as of now, the rule is only one member from your party gets to go into the locker area. Now, both of the Harry Potter sections in Universal Studios is probably going to be about your worst for social distancing. So if this stresses you out, you probably should wait until next year. Now, both of the Harry Potter sections in Universal are always going to be more crowded than the rest of the park. But even though it looks bad from this video, there's still, sufficient room to fit through and to keep your distance, but it's going to be a lot tighter than the other places. You're looking at probably close to 6 feet no matter what. You may be walking by people pretty closer than that. All right, now it's time for the tips. And remember, I'm no doctor and I have no medical education whatsoever. So my first tip to you would be to just follow the darn rules. All right, Universal has went through a lot of discussions with the CDC and things to make sure that they know what they need to do to keep you safe. And if you don't do those things, we might not be safe. And don't we want to get this over with as soon as possible? If you have any disagreements with the rules, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but you might not want to come. Just wait until those rules are gone, and then you can come and enjoy your trip and have a good time. Next thing I wanted to point out is that the buses are pretty crowded. There's not a whole lot of social distancing going on those things. So if you're planning on staying at a resort and you're worried about getting on the bus like that with a lot of people, that is probably the worst place for social distancing I've seen in the whole park. So you might want to drive your own car over here. The next quick tip I'm going to give you is to buy hand sanitizer. Now, they do have hand sanitizer stations all over the park, but being a neat freak that I am and a germaphobe and I'm a little bit anxious, I use extra hand sanitizer, and I like to have it wherever I'm at. I don't want to have to look for a station. Earlier I mentioned that I suggest getting a neck gaiter because it's a really comfortable face covering. Now, I suggest getting 2 neck gaiters because if you're here for one day, this thing starts getting old and nasty, stinky and stuff, and unless you want to bring some laundry detergent and just wash it in the sink or something, you might want more than 1 neck gaiter. If you don't bring a neck gaiter, you may want to bring more than 1 face covering of some sort, whether that's paper mask or paper face mask or a cloth face mask. You definitely want to bring more than 1. My next tip is to not touch the face mask. I've seen so many people walk around here touching things and then they keep grabbing their face mask. Guys, if you do that, it's gonna put germs and things on the face mask, and then you're gonna constantly breathe it in. That being said, you don't wanna touch anything. Now, I'm not saying if you do, you're gonna get sick. I'm just saying, I'm not touching things at this park. And if I have to, like maybe for instance on a ride, I use that hand sanitizer that I just mentioned as soon as I get off the ride. But generally, I don't touch anything. I don't touch handrails. I don't touch park benches. I try not to touch tables. Just keep your hands to yourself. And generally, people in this park are doing a really good job with face masks. There's only a few people that maybe don't know how to wear them correctly or something, but I feel safe for the most part. Now, however, there are some people that like to buy food and drinks and walk while they eat the food and the drinks. So they're gonna have to pull their face masks off to do that. And if you're walking, you're kind of, I don't know, it's just not what you're supposed to do. They recommend that you get your food and drink and sit down at the table before pulling off your face mask. Another thing that I want to put in your head is that even though that this park is running at a lower capacity, if you come on the weekdays, it's going to be at even a lower capacity. They're not going to change the rules for the weekdays compared to the weekends, but just generally people don't come to these parks on the weekdays. So from what I've seen so far, the park is much more empty on a Monday than it was yesterday on a Sunday. So that's going to give you a lot more space to get out, get away from people, and just keep your distance. So the last thing that I want to tell you for a tip is that if you have any problems with the rules that Universal's put in place, like the face masks or anything like that, you don't want to follow any of those rules, you might not want to come this year. Just let this virus go away and you'll be fine next year. Just save your money, because if you show up here and have issues with what they're asking you to do, you're not going to have a good time, because some of the employees are going to ask you to do these things and you're going to get aggravated, and heck, sometimes some of the park guests may ask you to do things, and that is never a good situation. So just wait until next year if you have an issue with any of these rules, and it'll be fine. So that does it for me. I hope this helped you guys make your decision on whether you think it's safe or not to come to Universal. You're gonna have to make up your own decision on that. I can't tell you. You gotta know your health background, you gotta talk to your doctor, and you just have to watch data and watch the trends of what's happening with what's going on. So I hope you enjoyed the facts that I gave you of the things, the strategies and the techniques and the procedures that Universal's doing. And I hope you take into some consideration some of the tips that I gave you. So it may be only temporary, but for now, it's game over.